In 2006, Britain and the US invaded Iraq. The neocons who willed that invasion felt no need to plan for post-war pacification with the consequences that we all know about. Such thinking is perhaps reflective of a complacent Weberianism that perhaps dominated US political science. How much better the advice of another German, Hannah Arendt? She targeted Weber for equating power with violence. For the state, the civitas is consensual too. Power is the essence of government, not violence. Violence is by nature instrumental. Like all means, it always stands in need of guidance and justification through the end it pursues. Power needs no justification. It needs legitimacy. Violence can be justifiable, but it can never be legitimate. Power and violence are therefore opposites, according to Arendt. Violence appears where power is in jeopardy. Violence can destroy power. It is utterly incapable of creating it. But the foundering of the neocon project in Iraq turned the tap on research funding in the US, and there's a lot of work coming out recently. And what the new research highlights is the ways in which the public and the private become blurred during periods of civil unrest. This is important because, as I said before, we know that during moments of political crisis, all forms of homicide, not just political killings, are likely to increase. As the Arab Spring reminds us, civil war privatizes violence, ensuring that even when peace is restored, homicide rates can remain stubbornly high for generations. As Stathis Kalivas, political scientist at Columbia, explains, the causes of intercommunal violence are, quote, intimate and banal. For the many people who are not naturally bloodthirsty, note the word there, naturally, people aren't naturally bloodthirsty, civil war offers irresistible opportunities to harm everyday enemies. Local and personal grievances are transformed into lethal violence. Only after it occurred was the violence endowed with meaning, be it political, religious, or ethnic. Now, the best example of what what you might call the political culture model of violence is the United States itself. It's the one I began with. The US is a civilized, advanced Western state, but it has very high rates of, consistently high rates of homicide. You can see the comparison. The US is at the top compared to Australia, Canada, England, and Wales. It diverges from the Western European model we saw earlier. It has consistently high rates of homicide. Now, many theories have been put forward to explain American exceptionalism, poverty, guns, race. Maybe, according to Eric Monkkonen, American men are just meaner. The problem with all these explanations is that the American homicide rate is highly regional, and it fluctuates wildly. You can see, I don't need to point out the regions. I think, are we close to what? I think we're pretty close to the south there, and you can see there, that's the rate from 1937 to 41, but pretty much consistent. Well, not consistent, but you get that sense of the vast regional variation of the American continent. In American Homicide, Randolph Roth argues that the predisposition to violence is rooted in feelings and beliefs, and that this is related to an individual's place in society. Even the most seemingly trivial altercations are governed, what he argues, by 4 variables. Homicide rates can soar quickly. Alternatively, if citizens feel that their society is stable and legitimate, they feel a strong bond with others. When people feel that the social hierarchy is just, violence is not necessary, for respect and homicides will fall. Men who lose faith in the state will take up arms on behalf of their faction or race. When government breaks down, men simply kill in order to get rid of... I keep using the word men because it usually is men. I'm not trying to be sexist here. But once learned, homicidal habits are hard to break and can be passed down the generations. In the US, homicide rates were affected for decades by political instability and hatred. The conflicts that arose during the Civil War and Reconstruction, according to Roth, continue to this day. Southern men, you can see from, if you remember from that previous slide, both black and white have these almost built into their DNA, those events. And this explains the regional variation.